Let's say you've set your heart on a career in video games. Good for you. But also let's say it's not clear how you get from where you are to your dream job as a programmer, writer, artist or designer. What then? We asked game developers for their best tips on improving your chances. First up, here's Chet Faliszek of the almighty Valve Software, fresh from his careers advice talk at Eurogamer Expo 2012. He says the best thing you can do is make something.
So yeah, here's a short version of the talk. Make something. Just do it. You can start small, you can make mods, you can make big games, but make something and get noticed, and that's the best way you can get into the industry.
So you could start out making mods and maps, says Faliszek, or hey, why not some Team Fortress 2 items? Making something of your own is all important, especially if you're after a job at Valve.
What you need to do is you need to have done something in the industry, or you need to have done something that we can see and look at. Artists send art, we do portfolio reviews. Level designers have portions of their work, and we also then look at people who are making cool stuff and we talk with them.
If you're an aspiring animator, that cool stuff might be something you make with the new Source Filmmaker, Valve's free 3D animation tool. It was the Source Filmmaker with which Randall Glass produced this tremendous Scout vs. Witch movie.
Who the hell are you?
It was over this movie that Randall Glass and Valve got talking.
He'd come by because he's local and we were talking about it, and it was an interesting conversation. He's like, yeah, I got some interest, people are talking to me. And then he actually emailed me last night, so I kind of changed the talk a little bit, as he got hired. And he got hired based on that video, and that's really cool to think that somebody just created something on their own, put it up on their own, and that got them the job.
And another Valve-related success story is that of modder Matthew Lauderdale, whose work on Left 4 Dead custom campaigns caught the eye of another developer.
So Matthew Lauderdale, he had made a map that got us really excited. We played it a bunch, started talking to him about making a map with him because we wanted to test to see what it took for a community map to make it on the 360. Because once you go to the 360, there's a whole bunch of dark art that you need to do to get that to work. And so we got him working on that, and then during that process, he's like, hey, I'm talking to the guys at Arcane, and I know those guys over there, and so we're excited for him, and started working on Dishonored, and now he's helping them ship Dishonored, and that's pretty cool.
Also, among all the bright lights, cosplay and energy drink samples at Eurogamer Expo 2012 was the GamesIndustry Fair, where recruiters gathered to chat up prospective new talent. There we spoke to the lead artist on the Total War series, Kevin McDowell of Creative Assembly, about how budding game artists can get a foot in the door. He says it's all about the portfolio.
You don't need to focus on knowing the right people. So you can do that after you have your kick-ass portfolio. Do that first, because you're not going to get anywhere without that. I've been coming here to Eurogamer for 3 or 4 years and doing portfolio reviews. So next year, yeah, come to Eurogamer and get your portfolio reviewed.
And what you put in your kick-ass portfolio depends on what kind of game you want to make, with mobile games on one hand and big AAA projects on the other.
If you want to work in an iOS developer or online games or something like that, quite often those teams are quite a bit smaller. So you need to do the types of things that they need to have. So you need to focus on UI, have really good 2D skills, and be able to put together a web-based or browser-based or iOS type game. So that means kind of having a breadth of skills and having the right style for that sort of thing. On the other hand, if you want to work for a AAA game developer, PlayStation, Xbox, PC, whatever, you need to really, really focus on a single area. So, for example, if you want, as an artist, you can only do animations, you can only do environments, you can only do character art, you can only do user interface, you can only do effects, you can only do cinematics. There's lots of different things that you can do, but you really, really need to focus. So at Creative Assembly, on my team, the Total War team, we've got almost 50 artists on the team. Every single artist specializes.
But if you're a young upcoming artist without a speciality yet, how do you choose your niche? McDowell reckons the smart money is on environment art and not concept art.
Some artists will kind of naturally be inclined to certain areas. But I kind of think that the thing you should default to looking at doing is being an environment artist. Because when you look at a game, 75% of the work is in environments. Therefore, 75% of the jobs are in environments. And a lot of young artists focus on 2D, and sometimes that's a mistake, because the barrier for entry for doing 2D and concept work is really high. And a lot of people that work in concept doing concepts in the game industry are quite experienced artists. So a lot of artists will spend 5 or 10 years working as a 3D artist before they move into doing concepting. So some grads can do concepting to a professional standard, but it's quite hard. So I'd really say the safest route is looking at environment art.
Alright, so that's if you want to be a game artist, but how about if you want to be a game writer? We turn to our man James Swallow, writer on Deus Ex Human Revolution. He says the trick is to have an analytical eye for game stories and to write outside of games as well.
Play a lot of games. Sounds elemental, but it's true. Play a lot of games, try and analyse the story when you play games, and read a lot, and try and write outside of games. Because if you know how to write, if you know how to tell a good story, if you know about game story, you should be able to find a way to mesh the two and get a good feel for what makes a good game storyline.
As for actually getting the job, Swallow says the way you get a games writing gig depends on the kind of project. Bigger projects might recruit a writer through an agency, for instance.
There are a couple of agencies, there's not very many here in the UK, who will recruit writers on and bring them on later on in the project. So a game will be started up, there'll be an initial process where the game concept is put together and then a writer will be brought on after that. Smaller companies, like independent companies, will sometimes recruit writers just straight out of the box. So that's a good entry if you want to work on a project from the get-go. A lot of indie game companies will appreciate a writer coming to them and offering their skills.
Finally, is there just kind of one thing you would say to anyone considering this kind of career?
Please don't do it because I don't need the competition. No, that's evil of me. Now is a really, really good time to become a games writer because games writing and storytelling in games is evolving to a stage where it's treated very seriously and we can tell sensible, intelligent, compelling stories. So this is a really, really great time to be involved. There's a lot of fantastic opportunities out there. And I think as a writer, being involved in game storytelling is a fascinating place to be right now because there's just so much more we can do.
What was striking in the advice from these games industry professionals is how little they emphasised a specific academic route.
A lot of people have this old school kind of concept of, hey, you know what, I've got to go start off as a tester and I'll work my way up in the industry, or I'm going to go to college and I'm going to go not make a game and just learn about them and do this. But right now there's so many different ways that you can just get into the game industry by simply making something.
But though formal qualifications don't come top of their list for careers advice, that's not to say they can't help.
I studied architecture way back in the 1990s, before many of you were born. And then I worked as a freelance illustrator for a while, and I kind of saw this whole PlayStation thing happening. I lived in Toronto, and there was a course that started up doing 3D, and I thought, okay, I'm going to do this. Forked out my $10,000 for the course, just like the rest of us. And I was working full-time at the time, and I did the course. And then one of the tutors at the course worked at a games developer in Toronto, and that's was my way in.
We had a word with Ashleigh Veres of the University of Bradford, which offers a mix of games-related courses in animation, visual effects and the like, on her best advice for new students.
Start networking in your first year. The more workshops that you go to, the more guest speakers that you go to see, because we have industry speakers that come in multiple times throughout each semester. The more of those that you meet and really pick the brains of the experts within industry that come in, you stand yourself in good stead then to build up a good portfolio. It's not just about the technical skills, it's also about having the creative edge and also having the personality behind it to drive you into industry. At the end of the day, these students need to have the skills to be able to sit in an interview and project themselves and present themselves correctly.
That focus on networking and knowing the right people runs counter to some of our industry insider advice.
You don't need to focus on knowing the right people.
But hey, it can't hurt alongside that more valuable practical experience as well. Finally, and also on the academic approach, we heard from Gamer Camp, a postgraduate course at Birmingham City University that puts students of all games disciplines into a trainee dev team to produce working games such as this one, culinary-themed action titled GastroGnome. For Gamer Camp student Olly Boustead, GastroGnome was something to show prospective employers.
I was finding it hard to just to get jobs. I didn't really have that many projects that I could show people. I mean, I'd learned coding and stuff, but there was nothing really a portfolio.
Again, it comes back to the value of that portfolio, the making of something to take to people who might hire you, whether or not you make it on a university course, in your bedroom, or as part of an online modding community. And Oliver Williams, co-founder of Game Camp, concurs.
And, regardless of what you do, make games. It's actually, there's dev tools out all over the place now for making games. If you don't know how to program or you don't know how to do art, make a board game, at least get to learn how a game system works. Appreciate how a game loop works by making yourself a board game as a starter, and then build from there. I think that's good advice.